So this is 1 week into the first test of precision planting. In this planting I did use 2 ounces of seed in each one of these 5x5 containers. You are getting a very generous growth here, but I do feel that a lot of seed is actually going to waste. Also, I'm seeing some kind of fungus or something growing down below. Whether that's due to crowding, I don't know. I did just pour some 3% peroxide on that, so hopefully that will take care of that. Here we see the peas where I did 1.5 ounces in each of these 5x5 trays. You can see there's a fairly good stand, but a lot of the seeds are not really sprouting, so I would say they are basically going to waste. I did 1.5 ounces on the peas, and I'm going to cut that back to 1.25. Here are the sunflowers. Sunflowers always seem to be kind of scraggly and disorganized as they come up, but these are basically doing okay. The one in the back here has kind of a void in the middle of it. I'm not sure why that is. They will probably even out over time. This was 1.25 ounces. I'm going to cut that back to 1 ounce. One thing I noticed with this tray was that as the weight picked up a little bit from the greens growing, the middle of it started to sag. So I came up with this idea and went to Lowe's and got some 2-foot sections of 1/2-inch PVC and cut them in half, and they are basically in the second groove, and that provides a good solid support for this. This is one of those trays where I had put the dowels underneath here. They were keeping the space, but of course no good as far as the sagging was concerned. So in the future I will not set up any more trays like that because this PVC thing seems to be a good idea. I wrote down my recipe for my plant food, and after I did it I realized that saying a slosh of this and a slosh of that was not exactly a very precise way to handle this. So I am going to get some kind of graduated cylinder, maybe a small set of cylinders. I'm not sure if 10 milliliters is big enough and perhaps 100 milliliters is too big. You can get some plastic ones from Amazon pretty cheaply. Maybe 50 milliliters would be a good size. Also on your list you see the latest tweak in formula, which is to have some yucca juice. Harley Smith of NPK Enterprises recommends this highly as a wetting agent, makes the water wetter. This is good for hydroponic and aeroponic systems because he says that the yucca helps keep the dissolved nutrients in solution rather than crystallizing, and this is important perhaps also in a wicking system that I'm using. Although I think the paper towels are a good idea, I do find maybe sometimes problems with getting the water distributed. So I'm going to do a little bit different thing here. I'm finding out that it's best to soak the wick before you put it in. That way it's flexible. Now when I first started learning about wicks, in Africa they were using really cheap polyester. They found that to be a good wicking material. So in this situation I'm going to put in a piece of poly this way, and I'm going to put some strips like that. This will tend to move the water into the paper towels, I think. I did the math on these towels. They cost 1.4 cents each. So if I put in a certain number of towels, like 6 or so, then you've got 10 cents worth of towels. That's still a cheap medium, I think. These towels do tend to fall apart fairly quickly. Okay, so that's the base for this. In the first video on precision planting, I thought that maybe the amounts recommended by that author were a little bit too much. So in this tray, I'm going to put the equivalent of 8 ounces per tray of sunflowers and 10 ounces per tray of soybeans. So half and half on this tray is going to be 4 ounces of sunflower seeds and 5 ounces of peas. The wick itself is on the side because of the way I'm putting these in my shelves now. A little bucket will go here, a little plastic cup. These seeds have been soaking for 16 hours maybe. Now this is 5 ounces dry of peas. I think you do want to try to get into the mode of measuring these things and trying to find an optimum. you know, you're trying to maximize your yield and minimize your cost, and measuring is the way to do that. So this gets a pretty solid layer, 1 deep, and this half of the pan. You're not going to get 100% germination on your seeds, so you can pack them fairly close. But with recommended quantities on that document, they were much too thick. I suspect commercial growers aren't this fussy, and I won't be in the future either. Just kind of let it rip to a certain degree. So this was 4 ounces of sunflowers dry. This used seaweed water will be going to the outside garden. This is pretty thick. Might go a little bit less. The thing with sunflowers I find frustrating is they're not very good at standing up unless you got a fairly thick stand. Even if you're going to waste a few seeds, maybe you still want to make them fairly dense. I think this could go down to 3.5 ounces without hurting anything. So now these are ready to go on to the germination pad, which is currently running at 80 degrees. So these will probably start to sprout fairly quickly. And here is the latest tweak to my setup. There are various studies out there which say that plants enjoy listening to classical music, so that's what I'm giving them.